Hello everyone, happy Friday. Happy Friday the 13th, in fact. So, all sorts of shit going on today, but I thought we would pick up with where we were from previously through the week, which is like, as far as I can tell, it's a complete clear out of number 10. I sort of have this image of Keir Starmer sat there on his own with his cat. And I'm not referring to Larry. Roger's just said there. Larry's probably got a few good ideas. Must have picked up something the time he's been there. He might have picked up any number of horrible things with Boris Johnson being there. But, I mean, one of the latest ones was a surprise for me. So, I mean, when Morgan McSweeney goes, you probably expect some others to follow him out the door. The problem with Morgan McSweeney is he wasn't simply a chief of staff. He wasn't like the office manager, which is sort of what the chief of staff is largely supposed to be. We all know that a chief of staff is, of course, going to have the prime minister's ear on political issues as well, but mostly they're supposed to manage the staff. But he far too much managed appointments. There were too many people, and so it's no surprise that lots of others are following him out the door. Particularly as it's not just that Morgan McSweeney has been replaced. Like, from my point of view, the key issue with McSweeney was that he was incompetent. For years now, I've made peace with the fact no government's going to be like there are too many people. And there's a lot of this going on at the moment in Labour. There are too many people who are they're trying. The reason why Starmer hasn't replaced them yet, first of all, it might have been a bit of surprise he had to get rid of them. But also, there's loads of people in Labour now jostling to get him to make the right decisions. There's all sorts of things coming out. Lots of different groups within Labour saying you need to do this, need to do this, need to do that. So presumably Starmer's also having to be sensitive to that. He doesn't want to get in some more people who would, like, at the end of the day, Starmer still at the moment thinks he can carry on, right? I assume that's the case. He thinks that they can carry on. And so as a result of that, he's thinking to himself, right, well, who do I have to focus on? I have to make sure I'm not pissing off my MPs. So he's got to try and build a team now that his MPs will approve of. But some of those MPs and other like Labour grandees will be doing it from a point of view of, well, we want our way of thinking represented. For example, I've heard some people saying that what Labour should do now is flip on like immigration and asylum, and move away from this blue Labour line. And that would be something that I would like to see. And there's other ones going, no, you need to focus on the cost of living. And it's like, well, you can do both at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. I mean, one thing I will say is the government must most definitely prioritise the cost of living. I mean, there's no question. It's not an either or. The cost of living is the biggest issue for people, and therefore it has to be Labour's biggest issue. But in terms of other things, yeah, there are some people wanting the government to fundamentally change direction. Whereas for my money, there are things I would like to see them change direction on. But for my money, competence is the thing. There's no point in replacing an incompetent team who were driving towards a sort of authoritarian style of government to an incompetent team driving towards a more liberal style of government. The competence is the key issue, isn't it? And this is why I was sort of interested by the fact that even the cabinet secretary is out the door. Now, the cabinet secretary is not supposed to be a political appointment. They're a civil servant, a senior civil servant, right? And they come from the civil service, and or they generally do some way. I mean, in theory, Simon Case, who was appointed by Boris Johnson, he was the previous cabinet secretary, he could have stayed on under Labour. In theory, the thing that stopped that wasn't the fact that he was Boris Johnson's pick. It was the fact that we could see from the so-called COVID files, if we can call them that, that he was far too close to the government. There was no arm's length. He joined in all the sort of boorish, laddish comments that Boris Johnson and others were joining in on. So Simon Case basically destroyed his reputation for impartiality. So he had to go. And then the latest Chris Wormold came in. I was surprised to see him go. Apparently, it's because he's now not considered the sort of person to drive reform of Whitehall. So they're likely, it looks like they're likely to get someone, I've forgotten her name now, but there's someone who's currently the head, the permanent secretary for the Home Office, who would be the first female cabinet secretary. But what is of most importance is if Starmer sees their job as driving reform of Whitehall, then, you know, maybe they see her as being suitable for that. What's it? I've got her down. Antonia Romeo. So she may be picked as the reforming type. Although I'll tell you someone who might have been good at reforming. It could have been Sue Gray, but I strongly suspect he's not going to get her back into any role. Thought Starmer did good calling out the football races. Yeah, I mean, they've been doing a lot more of that. I mean, you can sort of see there has been a subtle shift on some things. If we look at the way they've approached Reform UK from about late August, early September, there's been a significant change in approach to Reform UK. So Keir Starmer began with a strategy, no doubt informed by Morgan McSweeney, he's just our bogeyman for everything now, of treating Reform UK as if it's a viable political project. And suddenly now they've gone, hang on, that didn't work. You could sort of see the same thing with Boris Johnson as well, couldn't you? Like when Keir Starmer first became Prime Minister, he would say things like, I don't think Boris Johnson's a bad man. Obviously, he would say, we don't think he should be in charge of the country. But he would try and make out that he thought that Boris Johnson was fundamentally a normal politician, trying his best. He just wasn't very good. And then there came a point where it became evident that the switch needed to be, no, Boris Johnson's basically a dickhead. And we've seen the same thing with Reform UK. He begins by treating Nigel Farage as a viable politician. Whereas now, and they have been doing this since at least September, they have now been calling out, because it's looked far too much like Labour have been, at the very least, enabling racist rhetoric, because we want a counter to it. You know, it's no good Labour saying, well, we're not making the racist comments ourselves, or there's been a bit of dog whistling. We're not making the racist comments ourselves. He said, yeah, but you're supposed to be the one countering it. So they have been doing some of that, and they've been doing it again. You know, today Starmer again has been referring to flagrant racism in Reform UK. Where was it now? Let me have a look. Where's this? Is it? Labour has accused Nigel Farage of tolerating flagrant race. But again, they're still saying tolerating. Like, Nigel Farage isn't tolerating flagrant racism in his party. He's driving flagrant racism in his party. So I would still say they need to be stronger on this. You know, this is the wrong language. Saying that Nigel Farage is tolerating racism. He's driving it. He's driving it. But in terms of like, because I would have thought we'd start to see some appointments, unless I've missed it. There haven't been any, have there? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, please. But at the moment, Keir Starmer's without a chief of staff, is without a director of communications, is now apparently without a cabinet. I mean, the cabinet secretary is not just going to leave straight away. So presumably Wormold is still the cabinet secretary, but he is on his way out. And I suspect the reason they're not rush getting them in, because they need them in. I strongly suspect the reason is really that they have to be careful, not just to get the right people from a competence point of view. Starmer has to be careful to get people that Labour MPs will approve of, or at least enough Labour MPs who want to give him that other chance, I guess. Starmer ironically needs to do some internal consultations. Well, he does, doesn't he? And he is doing, but he needs to do it more often. This needs to be an ongoing process. I mean, I've said before, and I'll say it again, the Conservatives, they have something called the 1922 Committee, which, as you can guess, has been around for just over 100 years. And it's basically a committee of backbench MPs in the Conservative Party. And it's a direct link between backbench MPs and the leader, because it works whether they're leader of the opposition or Prime Minister. And it's to make sure that the Prime Minister or the leader in general, the leader of the party, is always being appraised of the mood on the backbenchers. That's its purpose. And they have regular meetings. It's not ad hoc. There's regular meetings between the chair of the 1922 committee and the leader, so that you don't find yourself suddenly realising that you're out of kilter. Labour would benefit from that. I can see it being a bit more difficult in Labour because Labour appears much more factional than, say, the Conservatives. Now, it's only an appearance. There's plenty of factions within the Conservative Party. Conservatives tend to be better at keeping their arguments behind closed doors. We know some of them spilled over in the last few years, but they're largely better at recognising the need to keep their arguments private. Labour, that's not so much of a thing. So it would be more difficult, but they would still benefit from that. They would benefit from that. Orangupagan, oh, sorry, there was something there. Oh, John's there saying Starmer's rating amongst the voting public's gone up 10 points, still minus 49 though. Yeah, you can't carry on with a leader that's that unpopular. Maybe he's interviewing 4 Yorkshiremen. Maybe. I won't get my hopes up. I haven't got in touch with me. Hold on. I haven't actually checked my emails today. I've been really busy this week. The good news is I shouldn't have any work to do tomorrow, apart from the stream, obviously. My videos are almost done. No, I've got no, oh shit. I've got lots of emails I don't want to look at, but I'm going to have to at some point. I haven't got anything purporting to be from the Prime Minister's office. MZ saying, McSweeney incompetent, you make it sound like there's no nefarious intent behind that incompetence when he was deeply aligned with former Samandi. Yeah, I do. I don't think there's any malicious intent. I think he was incompetent. I'm not saying he wasn't malicious. He was very tribal. Tribalism, by definition, you can't be tribal and not malicious. Because tribalism is all about seeing some people as in the in-group and some people as in the out-group, which I know we're naturally coded for biologically, but, you know, we've got these big brains so that we can try and counter some of our baser instincts. So I always try and rail against it. I'm not saying I'm immune to it by no means, but the reason why I'm constantly thinking to myself and constantly trying to check my own natural tribalism, because it is, even though it's not born of malicious intent, it is inherently malicious. And McSweeney was a deeply tribal man. But mostly his problem was incompetence. If he wasn't incompetent, there would still be people who didn't like McSweeney, but he would be in place and there'd be no great pressure for him to leave. It's because he's incompetent. That's ultimately his crime. Sorry, there was a question I was going to tackle here and I can't remember. Oh, sorry, there it is. Just very quickly, when I'm pegging that. So I take it the ban of Palestine Action, is revoked. It's not, no, because there's going to be an appeal. I am going to say that I've got a short for this later today. It's absolute cock up from Labour's point of view, that. Absolute cock up. I mean, I said at the time, I've got no time for Palestine Action. They are violent. They are terrorists. But it wasn't right to see people being arrested en masse in London just for holding up a placard. There was nothing hateful written on the placard. And I said what Labour would have done better to do was to amend the Terrorism Act so that you can have different levels of prescription. So a proportional act for me would be prescribing Palestine Action so that they can't resource themselves. So if you want to make sure they can't have access to banking or something, right, to fund, take away their means of funding, sure, that could be proportionate. But arresting hundreds of people for going out with bits of cardboard saying I support Palestine Action, that's not good. And the court has basically said, yeah, these guys are terrorists. They've said that, yes, they've committed some acts that are terrorist acts, but the action was disproportionate. So I think you need a sliding scale. And you'll notice Palestine Action, what have they got outside the High Court today? They've got a big banner saying, let me have a look at it again. I can't find it now. But they're basically saying revoke the Terrorism Act. So Palestine Action now are saying they want terrorism to be legal in this country. Why? Why don't they just want the law to be amended, so that it's not a sledgehammer? They're specifically calling for the act not to be amended or changed, to be repealed, to get rid of. They don't want terrorism laws in the UK. It's because they're terrorists. But a lot of the people supporting them are not terrorists, and they shouldn't have been caught in it. So that's my attitude on that. And it's the fact that Labour have lost it, okay, they could win it on appeal. It goes to the Supreme Court, who knows? I don't know. But the fact that they've lost at this point now is basically, it's empowering a group who smashed a sledgehammer on a woman's back, fracturing her spine, is the way I look at it. And it's going to be brilliant ammunition for Reform UK. It's all right praising Starmer for attacking Reform UK's racism. But this gives Reform UK a massive boost, because they get to, right, let's be real here. Palestine Action are not on the sides of the vast majority of people in this country. There's a core of them that support them, right? So the vast majority of people see them attacking Ministry of Defence facilities, that's our national security, attacking a policewoman hitting her over the back with a sledgehammer. She wasn't threatening them at all. She was just arresting them for basically breaking and entering. And then they're seeing that these people are getting acquitted in court, and now the High Court saying that you can't prescribe them. Reform UK could say this is the problem with human rights laws. Now, it's got nothing to do with human rights laws. It's got nothing to do with the European Convention on Human Rights. But Nigel Farage could label this as the government is trying to take action against this violent group. And they've got the video. We're not having to rely on reports here. There's a video. I've seen the video footage, right? And the government can't stop them because of our human rights laws. This is massive, massive ammunition for Reform UK, if they choose to use it, which I imagine they would at some point. Anyway, getting back to in here, 1922 committee is basically a trade union for Tory MPs. It is, yeah, it is. It's basically a union for Tory backbenchers. But it works. It's a good system. Labour should have one. Labour's would probably be more fractious, but they need something. Like, you might imagine, well, isn't that the job of the whips, to be this like conduit between the government and backbenchers? And yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's on individual policies, individual bits of legislation. It's not their job to be it's their job to be the conduit between the Prime Minister and backbenchers on government business, not the Labour leader and backbenchers on party business. So they need something for that purpose. They need a party structure that formalises the conversation, because the whips don't discuss political philosophy or anything, or political direction. They discuss individual bits of legislation. So they need something that discusses at a fundamental level, a proper bridge. I mean, you would think any party leader should make a point of meeting with their backbench MPs on a regular basis, but it's very easy for a Prime Minister to think they're busy. Well, they are busy, and think it's, so you need that bridge. You need it. I mean, the Prime Minister probably doesn't have time to meet all their MPs on a regular basis. So meet someone who represents backbench MPs, like a union leader for it. Yeah. Starmer's choice of Antonia Romeo for Chief of Staff is not without controversy. You amaze me, really? Let's have a read of it. She's been previously accused of bullying certain staff behind the scenes. Bollocks. Okay. I've heard a lot from Wes Street in the last few days, though not a lot from Rayner. Think I'd prefer Rayner, but I put a free £10 bet on Street in back in October. Okay. I think the reason probably is that Streeting is behind and needs to make up some distance. Rayner's sitting pretty. Rayner doesn't have to do anything. She doesn't have to stir any shit. In a way, it's actually encouraging that you're not hearing much from Rayner, because I'll be honest, if I were advising her, I would have advised her to say very little other than supportive comments. I would advise her to get herself out in Gorton and Denton and campaign like Billy O for Labour. I would advise her to do that. It's next door to her constituency. She's got every. It makes perfect sense for her to do that. She won't be accused of drumming up support for herself. Well, she could be, but it's next door to her, right? And Labour need to win it. So if I were advising Rayner, I would advise her to get out on the doorstep in Gorton and Denton. But other than that, I would advise her to say not a lot about the leadership or anything, because she doesn't need to. She's ahead. When you're ahead, basically don't do anything. Don't do anything. Whereas Streeting's behind, so he has to do something. He has to take the initiative here. And it risks backfiring on him. So, damn, I thought we'd have a video of you packing boxes to move to a plush apartment in London, take a place at Starmer's Cabinet Rats. No, I would not want to move to London. My wife would definitely not want to move to London. Say, if your videos are almost done, I think we can be ready for breaking news. They'd better not be. I'm having a day off tomorrow. How quickly will the new rules of foreign money and donations come into effect? Not for a while. They haven't even begun the process of passing the legislation through Parliament. So, you know, if we're lucky by the end of this year, if they really put the shoulders behind it, maybe by the end of this year. Remember, we know there's all sorts of things that can queer the deal on it. There might be some fairly impressive bits of it, which means House of Lords. The House of Lords, remember, the Tories have already shown that they are willing to go against explicit manifesto promises. So even though the government did promise to crack down on foreign donations and certain other aspects, you know, the elections bill was in the manifesto, but in much less detail. So there's all sorts of things. The legislative process hasn't even begun, really. We don't even have a bill yet. I don't think we're going to get one before May. And then even if they really try and push it really hard, the House of Lords could be difficult about it. So maybe if Labour really put their shoulder behind it, maybe by the end of the year. Maybe not. Guy behind Palestine Action's millionaire tanky from America, go figure. Yeah, well. But again, it was just such a political cock-up. It's like the, politically speaking, it's like the Scottish Gender Recognition Act. Well-intentioned in that case. It's not quite the same thing. That one was well-intentioned, but because it messed up, because they messed it up, they've now actually hurt. It wasn't their intention. I'm not blaming them, but it was because they messed it up, because they did something they had no right to do. They've actually made the situation worse for trans people because they gave a victory to transphobes. And this gives a victory to basically violent Trotskyites. And I say violent, Trotskyites are violent, that's the definition. You must be very careful with things like this. If you're going to do something like this, I mean, first of all, like I said, I would have rather they repealed the legislation before prescribing. At the time, there was no urgent need. They could have waited a few months just to go, let's just change a few things so that we can prescribe the group and disrupt their activities, but not hit innocent, non-violent supporters. Because you need that. With some terrorist groups, their supporters are also violent. Like you would, so at the top level of prescription, you'd have like Nazis, right? It's, You know, even people who support Nazis, yeah. So people who like collect Nazi literature at home and stuff like that, yeah, keep that as a crime, prescribe that, fine. But people who hold up a bit of cardboard just saying, I support Palestine Action, it's like, you know, there's nothing violent about that. There's nothing threatening about that. That doesn't need to be arrested. And so, and the thing is now, Labour have now made it more difficult. If they'd have done that in the first place, they'd have looked more reasonable. There'd have been no arguments about attacking free speech, because that's what it looks like. You know, the attacks on the government are not about the person with the sledgehammer or the people with the paint and stuff like that. It's about the people with the bits of cardboard in London. Old people, retired pensioners, being dragged away by police. Really bad. John, they're saying Romeo was cleared of the bullying claims in 2017. Yeah, but we know with things like this, shit sticks, don't we? Like Priti Patel was cleared of bullying, but we know she's a bully. We know she wasn't really cleared of bullying. The official account cleared her of bullying. So you have to be careful of. I mean, if Peter Mandelson is evidence of anything, it is beware the taint. Morgan McSweeney hasn't been accused of breaking any rules. It's the taint of you know, so you have to be a little bit careful. I was saying, going back to the Labour 1920 committee, like a subdivision of the NEC, maybe a parliamentary executive committee chaired by backbenchers. So the way, literally do it the way the Tories do. The way the Tories do it is they vote for an executive and a chair from backbenchers. So this doesn't include the front bench, which is ministers or shadow ministers, depending whether you're in government or opposition. It's just backbenchers who take part in the vote. So it's not all Labour MPs. It's just the backbenchers. They all vote for a chair. They vote for other executives on the committee. I think it's a 5-person executive committee. And that would work for Labour as well, because, you know, it would mean that all of the major factions would be represented on the executive at least. And the chair is likely to be the one who's seen as the best compromise candidate. There's plenty of people in any party, Conservative, Labour or whoever, or any party that's got a lot of MPs, where someone is just someone who gets on with everyone. That's who you need. Someone who you trust to keep confidences and isn't themselves deeply tribal. That's who you want. I'm shocked Labour's parliamentary party doesn't caucus regularly. Here in Canada, all parties caucus weekly when Parliament sits in. Something similar is true in Australia as well. I mean, in theory, you do have meetings between the Prime Minister and backbench MPs in Parliament every now and then. But it's not... You can't be completely open in what you say. First of all, there's lots of people there and there's only so much time to say anything. And secondly, because you know that someone's going to report to the press what was said, there's going to be a lot of like hesitancy about being honest. Whereas if you have one person who's going to be your go-to, right, they can have a behind closed doors meeting, a frank conversation with the Prime Minister. You can do that every few weeks, every month or whatever. They can have a frank conversation with the Prime Minister where no one else is there, right? And then they can go and tell backbenchers off the record sort of what sort of things have been saying, all unattributable. And they will, because Labour MPs are likely to choose someone with discretion, they will themselves make sure that they're very careful about what they say. But the understanding will be there. Breaking news, Trump attacks everywhere. What's he doing now? I mean, one of my videos for tomorrow is how he's backing down on yet more tariffs. The steel and aluminium tariffs have been massively scaled back again. Oh, you mean the climate thing? Yeah, that one's been in the works. He's basically saying, yeah, pollution's not a threat at all to anyone, which means he's going to power up pollution. Exactly. Roger, they're saying Green's a favourite here according to the book is. According to the book is. But remember, the book is odds are not a a probability, they're partly based on that, but they're also based on betting behaviour. If lots of people are putting a bet on the Green Party, then they want shorter odds, unless, of course, they're confident the Greens won't win. So the short odds just literally... What are the odds right now? Let me have a look. The odds are also a reflection. It's a reflection of risk on the part of the bookies. The bookies want to make money. Let us see here. So yeah, the Greens favourites by far and away. 4-11, which means if you put a quid on it, you don't even get a quid back. So very short odds. So that could be that they think that the Greens are likely to win. It could be that there's just shitloads of people putting a bet on the Greens, or some combination of the two. Worrying. Well, worrying from my point of view. Some of you may like that. My main concern is twofold. First of all, it's more likely to get Labour to panic instead of think about because there has to be a transition now. It's got nothing, if people think they're going to vote Green or Reform to get rid of Starmer, utterly pointless, because all it will do is Starmer's already going. It'll just get rid of Starmer in the messiest way possible. It will just cause people to panic and jump the gun instead of manage a careful, tidy transition. Interestingly, though, it has Labour more likely to win. No, it doesn't. Sorry. No, Labour. It's got very long odds on Labour. I tell you my worry, and I've mentioned this before, but this is my serious worry, right? My worry is that if Reform win, it's obviously really bad because it generates well, first of all, I mean, Reform have got another MP, which is always bad, and that MP is Matt Goodwin, which is horrendous. But also, it feeds this. I mean, how did Labour get this inevitable momentum towards winning government in 2024? They were winning they weren't just winning by-elections, they were winning by-elections they had no right to win. They were even winning by-elections that you would have thought if the Tories were going to lose them, Lib Dems would have won. And that again counters this bollocks narrative you've got. Oh, Labour didn't win, the Tories lost. If that were the case, why were Labour taking seats off the Lib Dems? There were by-elections they were winning that were natural Lib Dem territory. Labour were beating the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems weren't losing. So, and that created that sort of momentum, that wave. This does it for Reform UK. But the thing is, if the Green Party win, in theory, that's better because that's Reform losing. I mean, it's not Labour winning, but it's Reform losing, so you have to take it as a win. The worry is that the Green Party claim that they're going to do what Reform UK have done to the Tories. They're going to do to Labour. And it means that at the next election, when people want to vote pragmatically to keep Reform UK out, they delude themselves into thinking that they can vote Green and the Green can win seat after seat after seat after seat. And it's no. The Green Party can funnel lots of resources into one by-election on one day. They can't do that for hundreds of seats around the country. They ain't got the money. They ain't got the resources. Even Labour wouldn't have the resources to fight hundreds of new seats. Green Party certainly won't. So my fear is it splits the vote even more, allowing Reform UK. Because you could win a majority. We've already shown in 2024, you can win a majority with 30% of the vote. Labour got 33%-ish, 33, 34. But they won a massive majority. They didn't need to win a majority that big. So you could easily win a majority, a working majority with 30% of the vote. Well, if you split the left-wing vote right down the middle, you could win a majority. Reform UK could win a majority with 20-odd% of the vote, which is what they're on. I mean, that's worrying. That you could actually win a majority with a quarter of the vote. I don't think we're in that position yet, but we could be. Palestine Action being prescribed definitely came from Blue Labour. Everything's come from Blue Labour, apart from certain things, like Labour has stood firm on his, closer ties with the EU and on climate action. We know he's actually had to face down Blue Labour on that, but Blue Labour have been taking the lead on so many things. Been ridiculous. Off topic, what do I make of the new Japanese PM? Do you know, I haven't caught up. Is a more militarised Japan good for the region? I honestly have no idea at this point. All I can say is it seems to me an inevitable counter to an increasingly aggressive China. China hasn't invaded anyone yet, just to be clear, but it is increasingly aggressive in the Pacific. So you could argue it's an inevitable turn of events. James, they're saying Starmer's first 6 months were a huge betrayal of the British people's hopes and expectations. What? You mean workers' rights, renters' rights, improving people's pay? They gave junior doctors, resident doctors if you must, a massive pay increase. Public sector pay got above inflation pay increase. Pensioners got above inflation pay increase. Minimum wage above inflation pay increase. How's that a betrayal? Who are these British people you're imagining? But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. I've got to get ready for the other stream, Graham's stream at 1 o'clock. And of course, make sure I've got all my work done for today so I can have my feet up tomorrow and watch stuff. But anyway, have a great rest of day. Don't let the fact that it's Friday the 13th get you down. It's only superstition. Have a great day. Until next time, I'll see you later.